Unmasking the unthinkable. The top 5 horrific war crimes unveiled in the Israel-Hamas conflict's shattered reality. Welcome to our detailed and engaging analysis of the Israel-Hamas conflict, where accusations of war crimes have emerged on both sides. The ongoing conflict has sparked international debates on the obligations of nations, soldiers, and groups involved. In this video, we will explore the top 5 horrific war crimes that have occurred during this devastating conflict. International Humanitarian Law. To understand the accusations of war crimes in the Israel-Hamas conflict, we need to start with the foundation of international law. The Geneva Convention of 1949 plays a crucial role in defining the obligations of nations and combatants during times of war. It sets the standards for the treatment of civilians, prisoners of war, and wounded soldiers. Accountability under international humanitarian law. Violations of the Geneva Convention, such as deliberately targeting civilians, open the door for prosecution. This can be done by international courts or nations invoking universal jurisdiction. This means that any country can prosecute war crimes committed by individuals, including leaders and soldiers. War crimes in Israel-Hamas conflict. Now let's delve deeper into the war crimes that have taken place in the Israel-Hamas conflict, shedding light on their profound implications. These war crimes violate the very essence of international humanitarian law, which insists on the protection of civilian lives during times of conflict. The heart of the issue lies in the deliberate targeting of civilians, a clear and unequivocal war crime under the Geneva Convention. On October 7th, Hamas launched an attack aimed directly at Israeli civilians, resulting in a devastating loss of life. Over 1,400 innocent civilians, including children, fell victim to this egregious act. But the horrors did not stop there. Hamas militants, in a brazen act of disregard for the rules of war, took around 200 civilians hostage. This act of hostage-taking, explicitly prohibited by the Geneva Convention, added another layer to the litany of war crimes committed. The recent bombing of Al-Ahli Arab Hospital in Gaza has further intensified the global outcry against Israel's actions, with countries and organizations around the world labeling these aggressions as a war crime, a massacre, and a violation of international humanitarian law. The strike on Tuesday claimed the lives of over 500 people, occurring in a place where civilians sought shelter, overworked medical staff diligently treated patients, and the sick and injured had gathered with the hope of rescue or recovery. Israel has attributed blame to the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, a recurring pattern where officials falsely assign responsibility for attacks to other parties, often Palestinians themselves. However, threats from Israeli officials have raised concerns about their disregard for civilians and international humanitarian law. Israeli army spokesperson Daniel Hagari admitted that hundreds of tons of bombs had been dropped on Gaza, with an emphasis on damage and not accuracy. Challenges of proportionality. In the densely populated Gaza Strip, the principle of proportionality presents a profound challenge for the Israeli military. Fighting an irregular force like Hamas, whose fighters operate in urban areas without uniforms, magnifies this challenge. While it can be difficult for the attacker to distinguish between combatants and non-combatants, that difficulty does not absolve the attacking party from the duty to consistently differentiate between who can be targeted and who cannot. In recent days, Israel Defense Forces issued evacuation warnings to Gazans in anticipation of a possible ground assault. This move may be viewed as a humanitarian gesture, but it has raised concerns due to the difficulty of evacuating 1.1 million people within a few hours. It underscores the complexity of proportionality in urban warfare, where the scale of expected civilian harm versus military advantage becomes a matter of intense debate. The role of international bodies. The Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the Occupied Palestinian Territory, along with other international bodies, is collecting evidence of war crimes by all sides. Amnesty International has documented Israeli forces failing to discriminate between military targets and civilians. This underscores the need for accountability and justice. Prosecution of war crimes. How can war crimes be prosecuted? Gathering evidence amidst the chaos of conflict can be exceptionally challenging, but it is essential for accountability and justice. Suspects can be brought before international courts, ad hoc tribunals, or national courts. The International Criminal Court, ICC, holds jurisdiction over the West Bank and Gaza Strip, granting the authority to prosecute not only Palestinian nationals, but also any Israeli committing war crimes within Palestinian territory. However, it's important to note that international justice often comes with its complexities and challenges. The ICC, for instance, has not had a high success rate in prosecuting all those accused of war crimes. Nevertheless, an international arrest warrant executed by any of the 123 ICC member nations can be a considerable risk for the accused, who might be apprehended when traveling to a member state. Such warrants have led to political leaders altering their travel plans due to the threat of arrest, exemplifying the far-reaching impact of international justice. Legal framework for Israel's actions. To understand Israel's actions in the Israel-Hamas conflict, we must consider the legal framework within which they operate. Israel's primary objectives are rooted in self-defense and the aim to eliminate Hamas, a group it designates as a terrorist organization. International law permits self-defense under the UN Charter, emphasizing its right to protect itself from threats. Deeply associated with Israel's self-defense measures is the government's stated intention to terminate Hamas entirely. While international law doesn't explicitly prohibit the use of force to eliminate an organization, it is essential that Israel's use of force aligns with the right of self-defense under the UN Charter and adheres to the law of armed conflict and international humanitarian law. Ensuring that actions are necessary, immediate, and proportional is key in maintaining the legality of Israel's actions. Legal obligations for Israel. Israel, like any other nation, has fundamental legal obligations during its campaign in the Israel-Hamas conflict. These obligations are rooted in international humanitarian law and the Geneva Convention. Israel must adhere to these standards and uphold the principles that safeguard civilian lives. One critical obligation is not to use starvation as a weapon of war against Gaza's civilian population. This includes the deprivation of food, water, and other essentials for survival. Israel is also obliged to take every possible step to target only Hamas militants and their military infrastructure, while minimizing civilian casualties and the destruction of civilian infrastructure. This obligation emphasizes the legal principles of humanity, distinction, proportionality, and military necessity. Furthermore, Israel must allow for the return of displaced civilians after the conflict. While temporary evacuations can be legally requested, permanent displacement would be unlawful. The current circumstances in Gaza have created enormous hardship for Palestinian civilians, and Israel should take measures to ameliorate these difficult conditions. This speaks to the overarching need for Israel to adhere to international humanitarian law and uphold its legal responsibilities during the conflict. The Israel-Hamas conflict is a complex and tragic situation, with allegations of war crimes on both sides. It is essential that international humanitarian law is upheld and accountability is pursued to bring justice to the victims of this conflict. Our hope is for a peaceful resolution and an end to the suffering of innocent civilians caught in the crossfire. If you found this video informative, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking content. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in our next video.